Today yet, Pac. What am I supposed to say? It's not like he died a peaceful death, and I'm not gonna lie about it.
Irish!
Sorry, miss. I swear this shit is all fucked up. Cops all jittery. We're just gonna drive through the shitstorm and pick up the prize, right?
Yes. As we come around to the more recent Battlefield games, it was inevitable that we would have to talk about the project that spent 2 years in building spectacular 64-player maps, and serves to be the next-gen flag bearer of online shooters, but only succeeded in creating a day-one buggy mess that was sold on lies and half-truths that are not legally upheld. So if anyone in EA or DICE wants to try and sue me for making this video available for perusal to all of 15 people, then I'm sure you'll find a way to contact me. But in all seriousness, it was the biggest selling point that EA was going for when this game was making the rounds, and it completely failed on every level between the innumerable glitches and server failures that plagued the game's early history. Of course, we won't talk about it beyond this point because measuring a game on its multiplayer isn't a good metric for quality for several reasons that may or may not be indicative of the game quality itself. So let's focus on the single player that DICE tied to this multiplayer marketed clusterfuck. The premise this time around is that we're some dude in some sort of special operations group either as part of or on loan to the Navy under the authority of Garrison. And after liberating some important people from China, the group becomes the target of a personal vendetta against a Chinese martial law leader that is never actually seen on screen. The reason for this is that the group accidentally saved the deposed Chinese president. Now, the group has to do some vague anti-China things in order to reinstate the old president. Somehow. Yeah, if Battlefield 3 didn't give a shit about writing a plot, it seems like the writers realized that people don't actually care about campaign modes, and wrote up a storyline that could be summed up in 2 sentences. There's a bad guy ruling China, and the heroes need to go do war things against him. In all other modern warfare games, flimsy plot or not, we're usually doing something that results in an outcome of some sort. There's something that the heroes are supposed to be achieving. Battlefield 4 doesn't have that. The heroes of this game accomplish nothing other than screwing around with China for a bit. Sure, later on we end up blowing up a major dam in the country, but the heroes did that because they were looking for a ride back to their warship. For most of this game, all the main characters are really doing are defending themselves from the Chinese, rather than doing anything to further the American insurgency. Hell, the one thing we were supposed to be doing that would most ruin the Chinese army ended up being an ambush waiting to happen by the Chinese military character, because of course DICE needed to uphold their racist players' beliefs that any foreigner is obviously out to get them. But then she defects back to the main characters for basically no reason. For their credit, DICE tried to make Hannah and Irish more than one-dimensional characters, yet even they have to realize that weird first name and untrustworthy are the only way to tell them apart other than their skin color. And just to extend the olive branch, those 2 years that DICE spent in creating their spectacular 64-man multiplayer maps does make the campaign environments exquisitely detailed, and importing the game to the Xbone, it does look very nice, and those guys finally fixed the mile-long enemy accuracy that I hated in every other game they've ever made. Then there's the 2 new features the game has to offer. One being an MGS5 style tactical vision that allows the player to mark enemies for better murder potential, but then there's the other one that makes me question DICE's intelligence yet again. And that's Engage mode. where the player has the ability to mark specific enemies on the battlefield for the ally characters to attack. And that would be fine if it wasn't for the fact that at every other time, the allies are not engaged in the combat at all. These idiots will just stand there firing off the occasional shot, and usually they'll be firing into a wall or the enemy's cover rather than the enemy itself. The AI of the allies and enemies are so spectacularly brain dead that on multiple occasions I had to walk into the room personally and see that one of my allies and an enemy were right next to each other and neither of them died. Your ally helpers have the intelligence of Samus from Other M, since they have to be told all the time which of the bad men needs to be shot with these newfangled things in their hands called a gun. And beyond that, there are the cosmetic glitches like this one here, where my ally character will just disappear if I'm not looking specifically at him. There are multiple instances of that as well. But I suppose that's to be expected, when 75% of the game's development time was done just on finding ways to manage holding 64 players at the same time, and then failing at that for the game's first several months. And that's not to leave out how DICE decided to end this game as well. And while it doesn't hold a candle to Battlefield 3's amazingly terrible double cop-out ending that made negative sense, because the last thing that Tombstone Group does in Battlefield 4 accomplished literally nothing, and even included a heart-wrenching moral choice where you have to choose which of your two interchangeable allies would sacrifice themselves to plant a bomb on a Chinese warship, since Tombstone apparently forgot that C4 charges could be remotely activated. I chose Hannah because she'd obviously stab us in the back again, and that's not even the dumbest part of this ending. It is never established in the end that the Chinese martial law guy was even on the ship we blew up. So for all intents and purposes, we were told to off one of our own ally characters to blow up 1,000 or so indiscriminate Chinese soldiers. It really does show off how much of a mismanaged shit show this game's development was, that its own main selling point was its greatest downfall, to the point it also released with a glitch-riddled, pointless campaign hammered out in 2 days made solely to show off the multiplayer potential of Battlefield 4 that was perfectly encapsulated by the idea to canonically tie this game to Battlefield 3, a game that EA just decided was good enough to bear remembering through the reintroduction of Dima in the prison level. But that's EA's pattern of behavior, just like how mine is to tack a final score to this video and end it with a completely not shit show victory for gamers. I'll see you guys next time.